Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and this is another advanced promotion, or it's a promotion for a huge weekend that's coming up here, which is the Walk-In Conference, which will feature 24 hours of discussion and lectures and presentations about this really amazing phenomena. I have two people participating in the conference with me today, including the founder of the conference, the genius behind it, Shiela Seppi. And Shiela, let me get back to the main screen. And hi Shiela, hi Maya. Maya's going to be talking about her experiences. Why don't you just talk a little bit about your idea about why you put this and why it's so important, because I think you just said something before we started that was really key. So go ahead.
Sure.
Yes. Wait. Unmute yourself. Sorry.
You're muted. Yes. And Alan, your internet connection is in and out.
I know, and I don't know why that's happening, but we'll just go with it. Okay. Go ahead, Shiela.
Okay. So I am very excited about this weekend, and it'll start on Friday at 10 Pacific time, and it will run in the entire weekend. We have 22 speakers who are going to be sharing their stories about their walk-in experiences and their consciousness perspectives, excuse me. And so, for many, this conference is about sharing their stories for the very first time. We have some people, when I wrote the book, Walk-ins, the cosmology of the soul, that had never even told their families and friends because they were afraid of the reaction. And it's a really big deal for a lot of these people to be participating publicly in this conference. And so when someone becomes a walk-in, it really shakes them to their very core. And it not only changes their lives, but it can change the fabric of absolutely everything that they believe in. And for some, they no longer have the same connections with their family and their friends, because a lot of them can't even begin to grasp the concept of what's happened to themselves, much less be able to express that. But
can you just tell people though what a walk-in is, so for people who don't know, and then we'll talk.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely. Walk-in in a way has become a catchphrase for a whole host of soul experiences, because we really haven't had a language for what's been happening to people. So like for me, I'm what's considered a soul exchange, and that's when one soul's out and another soul's in. However, there's a lot of different types of soul experiences that I discovered in the research that I did for the book. And so we have soul exchanges like myself. We have soul infusions, where the soul actually receives an upgrade. It can be one or multiple times throughout their lives, but they bring in much more of their higher self or their oversoul essence. Then we have what's called braids, and these are two souls that actually inhabit the same body at the same time. They can either meld together, or the braid will end up leaving, or the soul will end up leaving, but eventually one or the other will occupy that body, or they come together. The other thing we have is what's called an overlay. And an overlay literally comes into the body and it will attach to the spirit, whereas the braid is in the body. It doesn't attach to the spirit, but the overlay attaches to the spirit, and it can act like a battery charger, helping the soul to, maybe it's been very ill, it's gotten very depressed, very sad, or it's just lost a lot of energy. So it can serve to charge that soul to, number one, either resume its normal life, or two, it will leave the body and the overlay will stay. And then we have what's called soul jumpers. And these are energies that can either be from our higher selves, they can be from a different oversoul, but they will temporarily inhabit the body. They kind of come in and come out. Now, one thing I want to say is with all of these, and there's more that I want to talk about, but with all of these, this is an agreement that has been made. So you don't have to worry about, oh my goodness, these souls are coming in and taking these bodies over. No, no, no. With a true walk-in experience, there is a soul agreement that's in place prior to that soul inhabiting the body. Then we have what's called a soul layering. And this is where multiple aspects of our multidimensional soul will come in at one. And so they're kind of layered one on top of the other. And at any point in time in our life, one aspect will come forward for a certain experience and then it will recede. And another aspect will come forward, have the experience, and it will recede. Sometimes you'll have one or two that come in, and sometimes you'll have many, many more that come in. But, you know, I was so surprised to find that there were so many different types of soul experiences, because when I started writing the book, I thought everyone was a soul exchange.
Well, Shiela, this is the most sophisticated language I've ever heard to describe levels of soul experiences. So, and I'm so happy we have Maya Cristobal here to talk about her personal experiences. But I also want to say, this is why the conference is 3 days, because there's so much information that that we're all unpacking here that is new, and it's a kind of spiritual evolution for the planet. So that is very exciting.
Right. And the other thing too is I want to point out, there are so many people. I mean, I know I've been contacted by at least 100 people through a variety of different mediums, trying to share their stories with me, looking for support, excited, and they're going to be writing their own books. And so what I'm hoping one of the goals of this conference will be is to really help to validate people that are out there, that they are having a soul experience and that they're not going crazy, because I literally thought I was going crazy when this experience happened to me. But, you know, there are walk-ins from every walk of life. It can happen at any point in time. For me, it happened when I was 38 years old. And this conference is going to be important to walk-ins because they're going to be able to not just share their story, but when I first started sharing my story, there's a sense of freedom that comes with it. We're all here, you know, for experience. And, you know, like I write in the book, the true reason for any of us to take this human form is to experience. And every experience that we have is helping us to consciously evolve. So I'm excited that we have so many people sharing their experiences, because people out there are going to be able to connect in with someone, I'm sure.
I just want to say the conference is Friday, January 8th to Sunday, January 10th. You can get tickets at portaltoascension.org and look for this flyer there and join us for this amazing new innovative weekend. So why don't you introduce Maya, who is going to talk about her story. So go ahead, introduce, and then we'll go into Maya.
Sure. Yeah, I met Maya a couple years ago, and we really connected and became fast friends. We sat on the IXO board for, you know, several years together. And Maya has a very intriguing story of not just being a walk-in, but also of being a walk-in in a hybrid body. And so, Maya, thank you so much for being with us today and being brave enough to share your story.
Yeah, talk about how it all started for you. If you want.
Well, there's a couple of start points that goes back. One of them goes back to birth. The other goes back about 3.5 years ago when I came out as a hybrid. But and you know, for most of my life, we didn't even have there was no terminology. There was no words like walk-in. There was no words like hybrid. You know, there was nothing, and there were no conversations. I mean, I grew up in the 50s. Where this was not a conversation. All we had was Rodwell, and that was just a gigantic story no one knew what to do with. But just a little bit of a big life is that I was born as a hybrid, and a hybrid is someone who is a soul living in a human body, but possesses multidimensional extraterrestrial DNA. The way I became a hybrid, and this is a longer, more controversial story, it was through my father being part of a military experiment regarding hybridization. And I didn't know that until I was in my late 40s. But in essence, I grew up like so many people you're going to hear about in this conference. I grew up believing I was an anomaly. I grew up believing that I accidentally landed in my family that I had pretty much near to nothing in common with. But if you can imagine the 50s and 60s when Freud was still reigning the roost in psychology, all of my hybrid personality aspects were looked on as psychological problems. So I was highly sensitive, I was psychic, I was intuitive. I'd be sitting in the living room and I'd say, who's that man standing in the corner? And my parents would basically not know what to do with me. And so as a result, and I think you'll hear this from almost anyone who talks about being a walk-in or a hybrid, the primary problem to be dealt with the entire way of life is the sense of isolation and difference. How do you fit in? How do you talk about your experience? Do you talk about your experience? Is it safe to talk about your experience? So at a very early age, I was about 5 when I remember beginning ongoing conversations with what I have termed the observers. I tend to lovingly call them my dream team because I always had about 5 multidimensional spirits in my life, in daily walking, talking to me. I'm clairaudient. I'm not as visual as a lot of people. I'm visual in meditation, but I have to work at sensing the aura and the essence of another spirit in the room, but I hear and I'm telepathic. So they kept me sane, and all I did growing up was just learn how to deal with being different and deal with the fact that I knew that I was from a different planet. I knew that I had a purpose, but I was little, didn't know what that was. So I feel like I had like a bunch of nannies at first. It was not about information. It was just about learning to occupy the presence of a human vehicle with a spiritual essence that came from somewhere else. And it wasn't until my 20s, and every decade or so, every developmental shift, the entourage of energies and beings and personalities, sometimes they were people who had died and had been a human and had died. The entourage changed based upon the information that I needed. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was told, here's the reason that you're here. You are a satellite antenna. You are a satellite dish. We are exploring what it means to have the human experience, especially the emotional experience and especially the experience of love. And so we're watching and you're transmitting and we're learning. And that was how it was until I was in my 40s. In my 40s, it became a two-way street. They were watching and listening and gathering information. And I was watching, listening, and gathering information. And so it was in my 40s, I started scribing every single detail of what they would share. If I had a question about the cosmos or politics or health or the body or anything, whatever I learned along the way, I wrote down. But one of the caveats, and this will lead me to my walk-in experience, one of the caveats about my presence on the planet was that my agreement was that until I was told that it was okay to say to anyone, my kids, my husbands, my family, my friends, that this is my identity, this is how I locate myself in the universe, until I was told that I could do it, I was to keep my mouth shut, because once I do it, I start learning and I'm interfacing with other people, and the purity of my transmission of what my human experience is would change. And so I kept thinking maybe by the time I was 50, they'd say, good to go. And then thought maybe by the time I was 60, they'd say, good to go. And I was getting really frustrated because I couldn't go on the internet. I couldn't go buy books. I couldn't go in the bookstore and say, is anybody talking about extraterrestrials? Or if Sheila's book was on the the list of to reads, I wasn't to buy it. So this was how I lived most of my life. I can't say that it was easy. My experience as a hybrid has been nothing but a profound act of faith.
Wait, what do you mean you couldn't buy these books or look at them? What do you mean by that?
So essentially, the beings that work with me said, we don't want you to contaminate your experience with hearing somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And if you knew how big the presence of hybrids and walk-ins and experiencers and contactees were, you'd absorb yourself into that to such a degree, because it was such a lonely road, that it would contaminate their ability to get pure data from my human experience. So it was 3.5 years ago, and I was sleeping, and I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had an experience that I normally have, but I don't necessarily see as extraordinary. So I felt there was a presence in my room on the left side of the bottom of my bed, but it is normal to me. So I didn't really think much about it. But I got up to go to the bathroom, and as soon as I put my feet on the floor, I could tell that I had no idea who this being or this energy system was. It wasn't any of my teachers and guides at all. And I was a little shaken, because I'm not used to 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody being in my room that I don't know. And I sat on the bed and I said, who are you? And why are you here? And that was, again, not an extraordinary thing for me to do. It was different to be with an energy that I had not had some sort of previous relationship with. And it was just as clear can be. And I could see a slight outline. So the energy looked not like an ET. The energy did look very human. And he just said, well, my name is John Mack, and I'm here. He said, I get the privilege of telling you that the ban is lifted, and you can go to your computer and you can learn what's going on out there, and you can talk about your story. And I just want you to go and Google me. So
you never heard of John Mack before that?
No, because I'm not reading a thing. And here's what's so interesting, Alan. So I am feeling like somebody let a thoroughbred out of the gate. I could not get to my computers fast enough. I'm Googling, John Mack, and up, first of all, in deep emotional love for the moment. And a picture of him came up, and as soon as I saw his picture, and lots of us have these experiences. It's just an instant soul recognition of, oh, this is someone I love and adore, and someone that I know. So I Googled him, and of course, the first thing that comes up is Dr. John Mack, Harvard School of Medicine, chief of psychiatry, wrote the first book on his research regarding abduction. And I think I probably time jumped about that moment. I think I sat there for about an hour staring at the screen, just feeling the import of the moment. And then eventually, I never went back to bed. I dug down in, and to only find out that while he was beginning his research program on trying to bust the idea that abduction was anything other than a new psychiatric problem to be identified, I'm reading that while he's starting his research, he is over at Harvard at the School of Medicine, and I am at Harvard in psychology.
At the same time.
And we're walking the same road, but I didn't know who he was because I had a choice to go into either psychiatry or developmental psychology. Now, if I had chosen to go into psychiatry, I would have been in his classroom.
Wow.
He's only about, I think he was at that time only about 10 years older than me. But I chose developmental psychology because there was far more openness to the paranormal. And I knew if I locked myself into psychiatry, I would never get there, not knowing that he is about to go down a road that probably was one of the biggest scandals in Harvard history.
Absolutely. I just want to say I knew John Mack. I'll show you a picture of me and him, but he was such a renegade, and he got into a lot of trouble from Harvard. They wanted to throw him out because he said, well, these people are having real experiences. They're having real abduction experiences, and they're not crazy. I mean, he tells a story when people come to him and they say, doctor, tell me I'm crazy. And he says, I have good news and bad news for you. You're not crazy, and what your experience is what's happening to a lot of people. So he's often come to me in my dreams as I've been writing about the abduction experience. So what is he? Is he like a guide to you now, or what? Talk about that, Maya. What do you?
Well, somehow I thought of the illustration, in classic traditional weddings, someone walks the bride down the aisle and then hands the bride off to whomever she's going to marry, even though I don't agree with this entire institution. And it was as if he was my door to walk me down the aisle into coming out. And so for the first year, he was very he was very present in terms of, I'd have a question, I'd just think a question in the bathroom. Let me tell you, I get my downloads in the shower. That's why I take the longest showers on the planet. So, but what happened, and this is a huge other conversation, because we all who have had extraordinary experiences and believe our purpose is to be able to bring this integration between what we have polarized for so long, which is there's humans and then there's others, and it's like Republicans and Democrats. So where I feel I'm writing right now is that demarcation has thinned to the degree that there's just an integration. It's not like I need to vacate my body to channel and bring someone in to channel. It is just like a dual processor on a brand new Mac. I don't have to switch between processing. It's just a seamless integration. And that happened over time with the presence of John, to the point where I don't even say, oh, I just heard something that came into my field and it's from John Mack. I just feel like I can occupy John Mack, and John Mack can occupy me. So the names and differences are sort of blurred.
What do you mean, you're channeling John Mack in a sense? Maybe that's a little strange to admit to, but why not?
Well, so here's this is also a big controversial statement. So I believe that these are never one way. We're coming to help the human. We're coming to give the human some new info, guidance. That's true. They have a reason for being identified with each person that they're identified with, which is their soul needs things as well. They have a mission to achieve as well on different planes in different dimensions. So it is a marriage. I think of walk-ins as a marriage on some level. It's a very sacred alliance that, as Shiela was saying, is not random ever. You're never taken over by another entity. It is an agreement for a period of time and a moment where the evolution of the soul is enhanced by that marriage, that alliance. And in many ways, I kept saying early on, I said, you're here with me for a reason, and we go into, is there past lives, or is there a timeline that we shared and then we split off that timeline? And I have to say, and I'll be blunt, I said, what is it that how do you benefit from aligning with me other than you gave me the good news that I'm out of the closet, right?
Right.
He said, my death is unclear in the minds of too many people, and I need you to help get that cleared up.
Oh,
And he
really?
said,
So do you clear it? Can you clear it up right now? What does he mean by that? Because what I heard, some people say, no, he was killed. I think it was an accident. So what did he tell you?
well, you know, we would say nothing's an accident, right? But
Yeah.
I do believe that there was a hand in his being run over by this car, by this particular driver. That yes, it could have been that he had achieved what he was here for and he left. But I do believe it had a malevolent, I think Harvard just got rid of him, is my opinion.
Is that what he
was-
said to you? Did he say that to you directly? I mean, as that telepathy, I'm just curious.
I mean, the thing is, if you know, and you do probably, I mean, Harvard is like the Catholic fucking church. Excuse
I
my
know.
F word. It's like the Catholic Church. It has all power, and he shook them to the core. And then when he hired the incredible lawyer he did, and he won his lawsuit, the
Danny
amount
Sheehan, Danny Sheehan, who's
Right.
defended Karen Silkwood,
Right.
lots of great, and he says this is a freedom of speech issue, and John had tenure from Harvard. They couldn't fire him, and
Right.
so, but that was about how many years? I think he died
2003,
about,
I think it was 2003 or 4. Was that right?
but he died a few years after that whole thing came down. So why would Harvard want to take him out then, if that's what they did? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I mean, you know, like every other news report on anything, on the election, on global warming, on whatever it is, we only get just sound bites of the real stories. And I think that what I feel he is communicating is that the story is bigger than it seems on the surface or that was reported. But I think the piece that is most touching in some ways and gives me great pause about being able to even have access to his words and his talking to me, etc. Because he, you know, lots of people have had experiences with John. Lots of people feel very related to him on a very personal level. Is that he just did not feel, the main thing was he wasn't wanting to communicate, I got assassinated by the powers that be at Harvard for having bucked them. He was saying, I left prematurely. I have more to say. I didn't get to complete my message. And so a lot of it for me is listening to what wasn't complete for him.
That's very interesting. You know, I just wrote this book called Making Contact, where I include an unpublished essay by John. And I'll show that, but I first want to show the picture of me and John together. Do you see that up on your screen?
Oh, look at you.
This is probably, I don't know, 1995 or 6, right after he came out with a lot of the work, and he was speaking publicly. I hosted an event for FIONS, the Friends of the Institute of Noetic Science, with John, and he was such a great speaker and so personal and so dynamic and so intelligent. That's what really makes him a spokesperson for the whole UFO ET contact movement, is that he had the intelligence and the resources and the psychological background to say, these people aren't crazy. There is something happening. So I just wanted to show that little piece off, because we weren't like great friends, but you know, we knew each other. He knew me, and he was open.
That's a wonderful picture. I mean, my feeling, I mean, my experience of him is not that way now, but everything I've read and all the videos, you know, this was a costly thing for him to do. It cost his soul and his emotion. It was a very painful choice after choice after choice. And I think he had a lot of tortured moments in some ways.
I think he was a renegade though too, and he welcomed the challenge to buck the system. He he was very anti-Western mechanistic logic. He knew, one of my favorite quotes from John is, he said, we must develop other ways of knowing. So he was ready to take on a new way of thinking, and that was what was so exciting about what he stood for, you know. And actually there's a book coming out called The Believer by Ralph Blumenthal, and that's a whole book about John Mack's life and what's happening.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know, and to just wrap up a few things, the way that I get to spend any time recognizing his presence is I do a lot of writing. He is really my writing partner.
Is he?
Yeah,
Well,
in
this
the last couple of years.
I want to know what he's telling you about, you know, the next level of his work. I'm curious about that. You know, like what does he now believe about the reality of abductions, ET contact, higher consciousness? What do you feel he's trying to say now?
Well, you know, I don't even know if that's a question that probably
Right.
even applies, because it's sort of like that creates a linear timeline. What does he believe now? He's just an essence of him who is trying to make sure that the experience that he brought into our consciousness for the very first time. I mean, I can't believe that I went 20 years not knowing that his book Passport to the Cosmos, or the, you know, abductee, was even out in the world. So the thing that he's communicating the most to me, which is in conjunction with the experience I'm having in my life, is to help understand that we keep looking at the walk-in, the hybrid, the passing over and after death as phenomenal other experiences that we have to approach as an other, as instead of it being just part of the experience that we have had a veil up on for so long. So that's why in this particular conference, which would be the first time I've taught a course of any kind, you know, Shiela says, well, what do you want to teach? You want to tell you a story? What do you want to teach? And I can't remember if this really happened, but this is how I remember it. And I said, well, nothing special. She says, well, it's special. What do you want to teach? And I go, well, I want to teach a course on nothing special. And it's like, but what we're asking you is, what do you want to teach about? And I'm like, because I want to teach that there is nothing special about a Shiela being a walk-in, a me being a hybrid, the other 19 people. We just happen to have articulated it and been able to be present in a certain way. And we've learned how to cultivate the connection. And I really believe that John is a lot about cultivating the ripping away of the demarcation between the self and the other, even though in his books, he was still in a linear world talking about, you know, the abductions.
But he was starting to bridge that sense of self and cosmos. Passport to the Cosmos is a lot about that. But when you say nothing special, it's either nothing special or it's all special. I mean, how does everyone watching now get into that body? Well, that's nothing special. It happens billions of times, but it's also an incredible miracle as well. I mean,
it is.
And I think that's what this conference Shiela put together is so important, to showing the value of the incarnation. Who is this energy in that body? I mean, and what do you identify with, and how unlimited is it really? That's what's exciting, Shiela, about what you've done here.
And one of the beautiful things, and Maya kind of alluded to it as well, we all are multidimensional beings. We all, everyone on this planet has been here many, many times. For me, I've had Palladian experiences, Arcturian experiences, Mantis experiences. I came from a collective. You know, I wasn't on a planet, I was in the collective, and we were working in the Earth grid. And but I'll tell that story later. But that just shows we all have these multidimensional aspects about us, whether or not we remember it. And I think one of the biggest gifts that a soul receives in becoming human is waking up to that fact of who we truly are and experiencing that awe and being able to expand. Not everyone is going to wake up to that fact, and they don't have to. Eventually, we're all going to get there. But
Right.
for those of us right now who are aware of who we are, where we come from, what our missions on this planet are, it's an exciting time to find people of like mind. And that's honestly one of the reasons when I started writing the book, I wanted to begin to interview people, is because I knew I wasn't the only walk-in out there. But much like Maya, I was told, even until I submitted the first draft of this book, I was not allowed to read anything about walk-ins.
Wow.
I didn't visit any websites. I didn't know any other walk-ins. And I did feel like that I was on an island. And Rebecca Hardcastle Wright really helped me to find community. She really did. And so, I am forever grateful to Rebecca. She's been a bright, shining light in my life for many years, and she will be one of our speakers and is the CEO of the IXO, who is also having a conference in February. And Maya, you may want to speak to that a little bit more.
And I also want to say Rebecca Hardcastle has been an inspiration for me because she defined exo-consciousness, which is what we all really are. I don't think our consciousness is of the earth. I think it is of the cosmos. So consciousness itself. So yeah, talk about IXO and also what all this has taught you about being in the world, Maya, this like allowing yourself to come out like this. How has that changed you somehow?
Well, it has been a little daunting, because I think one of the things that, if we just grab a thread on John Mack here, one of the things that make my alliance with him easy is that I come from very much the same background. I have the Harvard brain. I've got the credentials. I've got the 35 years as a psychologist. I was always a maverick. And when you've built a persona around that kind of thing, it has a double-edged side to it to come out, because number one, it can lend more credibility. Like you said, Alan, one of the things that John did was he brought subject matter that was so fringe, and he brought it into the Harvard yard, and he brought it into the psychiatric world, and he had so much brilliance after his book on T.E. Lawrence and his getting the Pulitzer. So it causes discord in people, because we're breaking down the walls of the perception that anyone that talks about the things we're talking about are fringe people. They have to join a club, so they've joined the UFO club, and unfortunately in the last 20 years, a lot of the disclosure that's out there has supported the fringeness of our comments about who we are, but it's growing into a mature place of saying, no, this is not a fringe thing. We're just being warriors to come out and talk about it, which is really why Shiela and I became part 3 years ago of the Institute for Exo-Consciousness that had been started by Rebecca, and decided to create a full-bodied, mature platform for having these conversations and for learning and for creating an incubator for people, because so many people download inventions and concepts and are, like Tesla, but they don't know where to take it or put it or how to develop their ideas. So we are still in our third year. I think by February, we will have our website completed, because we're not wanting to be premature. Instead of the Institute for Exoconsciousness.com, it's I-EXO.com. And and Shiela and I will both be part of that conference as well in February. So
What's the dates of that conference?
February 6th, is it the 6th, Shiela?
Okay.
It's
I'm
right.
looking, I'm thinking maybe the 7th.
It's here. Wait a minute. I've got it.
Um,
It is the 6th of February,
Yeah,
Saturday.
6th of February.
And the same exact website that Alan showed on the flyer will
Oh, yeah.
later show our event that will happen in February. And it's to just help create conversation, demystify a lot of people's perceptions about walk-ins, et cetera. I'll probably talk about walk-ins, obviously, there too, even though I haven't talked about it here. But it's the IXO is, I think, going to be a hub and anchor for people to have community.
What's IXO stand for?
Institute for Exo-Consciousness.
Oh, okay. And that's being hosted by Portal to Ascension as
Right.
well.
Right, right.
Portal to Ascension is great. Anything else you want to add about just I particularly John Mack, because I really liked him. He was a great guy. I considered him a friend. Anything else he wants to tell us at this time that is important for this moment of evolution? If it comes.
Well, it isn't in the truth isn't in the data. It's not in the details. It's in the experience of the heart between one person and another, one being and another. And we are very data driven as a globe. We want proofs. We want to see the UFOs. We want to have the details in place to give us some validation for the experiences that we have. And in many ways, what I've really learned to embrace because of John's presence in my life is to recognize it isn't just about the power of the heart. It's about that the heart is the soul. This is why we're here. The expression of the heart has been so constrained over time that whatever shift we're about to have on the planet is really a heart revolution. It's not an information revolution, even though, yeah, lots of people will say, oh, like they said, the new UFO, just wherever it was in LA, is to try to nurture people into themselves, become acquainted with this multidimensional universe instead of constantly looking out to this multidimensional universe. His constant theme is that the heart is the bridge to create that kind of integration between self and other, human and non-human. And I really believe that a lot of what you'll hear at the conference on Saturday, although I do not know all the people, it's just been a great gift to meet people I have only heard about and read about. You'll see that it's like all roads lead to pretty much the same thing. All of us have very different experiences, but ultimately, I think we will have the same message. And John's is just really, he's just an ambassador. So I want to say that he is not John Mack, the John Mack that walked Harvard Yard.
Right.
He's not the personality of John Mack that wrote the book. He is the essential nature of who he incarnated to be as John Mack. And so he's very unencumbered by a lot of things. And although we love him as a personality, he's basically just an emissary like the rest of us, saying, let me just keep whispering in your ear to just love, just go love. Every answer's there. It's not in the next book. It's not in the next experience, because a lot of fringe people love experience chasing, storm chasing. And this is a spiritual revolution that this walk-in book is talking about. This is not an information revolution. Mm-hmm. And so I hesitate when you say, well, what would John Mack like to say to us now? As right. If we left off all these years ago with the John Mack that wrote Passport to a Cosmos.
he's simply part of a gigantic whole, but it was relevant to my humanness for him to show up as John Mack.
Great.
Instead of Jesus or somebody.
I
Right?
get that. That is such a good way of putting it, because that is the multidimensional awareness we are all moving into. And people like John and Shiela, yourself, we're all here to show who we are. We're more than just human, or what's been called human. And that is why this conference is so important. It's not about the bizarre strangeness of a walk-in. It's about the ordinariness and the extraordinariness of who we all are.
Right.
So thank you, Maya, for your time here. I look forward to seeing you at the conference. And
you're an MC, right?
I'm going to MC, me and Shiela, and maybe Neil a little bit. But, I got more and more excited about the conference, Shiela, as we went deeper into these talks. So any final message you want to say? I'm just going to put that poster up about the upcoming conference and what someone watching should expect, and talk a little bit about what if, can you see that up on your screen?
Yep.
Yes.
What if this is new to someone and they say, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is my story too? I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this. So talk a little bit about that appeal of the conference.
Sure. So for those individuals who are able to identify with things that are said during the various presentations, we also will have set aside hour-long rooms where people can talk with different speakers. We've had people to volunteer their time, and they're happy to talk one-on-one with individuals about what they're experiencing, because sometimes it can be that aha, and sometimes it can be kind of groundbreaking for them. And so we do have that set aside. We also have, as a result of desiring to have community, the walk-ins have continued to meet, even though the book was published this summer. And it was so beautiful because the community really wanted to stay together. So we've been meeting on a monthly basis. And as that group, we have expanded, and actually on Thursday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we'll be having our first meeting open. We're inviting anyone who believes that they're a walk-in, a starseed, a dimensional being, having spiritual experiences, need support to attend this meeting. And they can get a hold of me for that at Shiela@ShielaSepi.com. And also, if they have any questions about walk-ins, they can also contact me at Shiela@ShielaSepi.com. And it might take me a day or two to get back, because my emails are getting longer and longer by the day that I have to go through, but I will try to answer each and every one of them. And
Great.
so we're going to hear so many wonderful stories. So many people have beautiful gifts and talents and meditations and activations that we're going to share. So I'm really looking at this as a spiritual experience for all of us.
I think so. I think everyone watching will have an upgrade. I mean, there's a vibration just to what Maya was saying in her story. When you start to tune into that level of frequency, it activates us. So this has been exciting for me. And it's going to, yeah, go ahead, Maya. Yeah. What was, oh, wait, you're muted, Maya.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to add is that although a lot of the presentations are going to be by experiencers, people who identify as walk-ins, identify at very specific levels as walk-ins, there are a number of presenters who do not identify as walk-ins, but they have been working with walk-ins, they've been doing hypnosis, they've been doing, one of our people who's a great friend and also on the board with the Exoconscious Institute, is going to talk about that her mother was a walk-in. Now we're talking a walk-in from like the 40s, and it's, so
there's a lot of people who are going to talk about their experience of accompanying and working with walk-ins, as well as the people who are identifying as walk-ins.
Well, that's part of the evolution of culture, and the evolution of a spiritual culture is to start to language new thoughts so they can be integrated into the collective without a language. And Shiela, you've done an incredible job categorizing all this, which adds to clarification of experience. And that's what the evolution of culture, not just spiritual culture, but culture in general, is about, defining aspects of experience. And that's what's so exciting. So thanks. I do have another call I have to get to my neck, but thank you, Shiela. We're going to do something tomorrow with Neil Gar, the organizer. So stay tuned to New Realities. New Realities also have a show coming up with Doc Wallach, who's an expert in health and nutrition, coming up soon in 5 minutes or so. So thank you all for tuning in. This is the book that has John Mack in it, and a lot more to come. Yes, that's a book which is a collection of essays by a lot of UFO specialists. You see Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Streiber, John Mack, Darryl Anka, who channels Bashar, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, Deisree and J.J. Hurtak, Carolyn Cory, and me. I have my story in there too.
Great.
So thank you all for watching, and thank you all online for your comments, and stay tuned to more new